Bonjour et bienvenue à toutes et à tous pour notre rendez-vous quotidien en ligne pour la presse, en direct et en ligne. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le jeudi 12 novembre. Nous avons quelques annonces à vous faire avant de passer à vos questions pour ce rendez-vous qui sera court car nous devons laisser la place à la vice-présidente Vera Jourova et la commissaire Dalli qui viendront à 12h30 vous présenter la toute première stratégie européenne pour l'égalité des personnes LGBTIQ. Tout d'abord, sur COVAX, l'Union européenne a annoncé aujourd'hui qu'elle apporterait 100 millions d'euros d'aide supplémentaire en subside pour soutenir COVAX, le mécanisme qui garantit l'accès universel et équitable aux futurs vaccins contre Covid-19, y compris dans les pays à faible et moyen revenu. Cette contribution s'ajoute aux 400 millions d'euros de garantie que l'Union européenne a déjà engagés pour COVAX, ce qui fait de l'Union l'un des principaux donateurs. Avec cette nouvelle contribution, l'UE renforce encore ses investissements pour soutenir la reprise mondiale. La présidente de la Commission européenne, Ursula von der Leyen, a fait cette annonce aujourd'hui lors de sa participation au Forum virtuel de Paris pour la paix, où les dirigeants du monde et les organisations internationales discutent de la réponse mondiale et de la reprise après la pandémie. Je passe maintenant la parole à Myriam pour une annonce sur le commerce international. Myriam.
Bonjour. La Commission européenne a publié aujourd'hui son 4e rapport annuel sur la mise en œuvre des accords commerciaux de l'Union européenne. Les rapports montrent les avantages de notre réseau commercial mondial en expansion. Malgré les tensions sur la scène du commerce mondial, nous constatons que les accords commerciaux de l'Union européenne ont continué à faciliter un commerce équitable et durable et de consolider les cadres des règles internationales. Les échanges avec les 65 partenaires commerciaux préférentiels de l'Union européenne couverts par les rapports ont augmenté de 3,4% en 2019 par rapport au commerce extérieur total de l'Union européenne, qui a augmenté de 2,5% au total. En particulier, au Canada et au Japon, les accords commerciaux de l'Union européenne ont stimulé le commerce de près de 25% respectivement depuis les rentrées en vigueur. Les représentants du Parlement européen et des États membres, ainsi que des autres institutions de l'Union européenne et parties prenantes, vont maintenant discuter les rapports avec la Commission. Vous trouverez de plus amples informations dans les Daily News d'aujourd'hui.
Merci beaucoup Myriam. Il y a eu une petite interruption lors de ton annonce, donc c'est bien pour préciser que, en particulier en ce qui concerne les accords avec le Canada et le Japon, les accords ont stimulé le commerce respectivement de près de 25% et 6%. Donc 25% pour le Canada et 6% pour le Japon depuis leur entrée en vigueur. Voilà, cela nous amène à la fin de nos annonces pour aujourd'hui et je suis prêt à prendre vos questions. Je passe la parole à Remo Hess. Remo.
Bonjour Eric, tu m'entends? Ok. Ok. La présidente von der Leyen, elle vient de tweeter que ce matin, elle s'est parlé avec la présidente suisse sur l'état des lieux par rapport de l'accord cadre et que le gouvernement suisse l'a informé de sa position. Est-ce que tu peux nous donner un peu plus de détails, ce qui était discuté dans ce appel? Et est-ce qu'on s'est accordé pour une sorte de calendrier et pour quand les négociations vont reprendre? Merci.
Merci beaucoup Remo pour ta question. Je peux effectivement confirmer que la présidente du Conseil fédéral suisse, Madame Sommaruga, a ce matin appelé la présidente de la Commission pour lui présenter la position du Conseil fédéral quant à l'accord institutionnel cadre qui a été négocié entre l'Union européenne et la Suisse. Je ne peux pas rentrer dans les détails des sujets qui ont été évoqués par la présidente du Conseil fédéral suisse. La présidente von der Leyen a simplement pris note des informations qui lui ont été transmises et s'attend maintenant à obtenir plus de détails de la partie suisse. Et ce n'est qu'une fois que nous aurons obtenu ces détails que, bien entendu, nous pourrons commencer à voir quelles seront les éventuelles prochaines étapes. Ce qui reste clair, c'est que, comme le dit le tweet de la présidente, nous pensons qu'il faut des progrès rapides dans la signature de cet accord cadre. Stéphane, sur le même sujet, je suppose. Follow-up, Remo?
Savoir si la présidente elle a donné un espace de cadre par rapport du calendrier quand elle attend des précisions voilà, de part du gouvernement suisse. Merci.
Le mot qui me vient à l'esprit est le mot « vite », puisque nous souhaitons avancer rapidement sur la signature de l'accord cadre. Nous nous attendons, mais cela fait déjà un certain temps que nous le disons, à ce que les choses avancent effectivement vite, y compris en ce qui concerne la fourniture des éclaircissements, des détails. Stéphane.
Oui, c'est sur le même sujet. Je voulais juste savoir, est-ce que vous avez reçu des textes ou est-ce qu'on vous a annoncé des textes de ces déclarations ou des clarifications que la Suisse voudrait faire? Et est-ce qu'il y a des visites, des rencontres physiques qui sont prévues dans un avenir proche? Merci.
Merci Stéphane. Malheureusement, je n'ai vraiment pas d'autres informations à fournir. Il y a eu un coup de fil et nous avons dit que nous attendons de la part du Conseil fédéral suisse des informations supplémentaires sur les sujets qui ont été évoqués pendant le coup de fil. Rien d'autre n'a été décidé. Nous avons pris note et nous attendons ces informations avant ou afin de pouvoir déterminer la suite des événements. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur la Suisse? Oliver, je vois que ce n'est pas sur la Suisse. Please only keep your hand raised. Ah, Stéphane, you have a follow-up. Yes.
Oui, je ne comprends pas très bien. Alors, il y a un coup de fil, mais vous attendez des informations. Alors, est-ce que ces coups de fil avaient aussi un peu, il y avait de la substance, ils ont des informations déjà dans quelle direction ça pourrait aller, ou c'est juste un coup de fil pour dire qu'on va envoyer des informations? Ça, je ne comprends pas très bien ce qui s'est vraiment passé. Merci.
D'accord. Non, je pense que le tweet dit que la présidente de la Confédération suisse, Mme Sommaruga, a informé la présidente von der Leyen de la position du Conseil fédéral suisse sur l'accord institutionnel, sur l'accord cadre institutionnel. Mais bien entendu, comme tu peux le comprendre, un coup de fil reste un coup de fil. Et nous avons pris note des informations qui ont été transmises oralement par Mme Sommaruga, mais nous nous attendons à recevoir plus d'informations sur les sujets évoqués. Stéphane, dernier follow-up.
Oui, juste pour être sûr, est-ce que Mme Sommaruga a dit que la Suisse a l'intention de signer cet accord ou pas?
Stéphane, je n'ai rien d'autre à dire sur le sujet et je te serais reconnaissant d'adresser les questions sur ce que Mme Sommaruga a pu dire pendant le coup de fil à Mme Sommaruga elle-même. Merci. Nous allons changer de sujet et je passe la parole à Oliver, qui a une question commerce, si je comprends bien. Oliver.
Oui, salut. Alors, le Parlement européen vient de voter hier soir, si j'ai bien compris, une résolution demandant à la Commission d'arrêter l'autorisation du soja GMO OMG sur le marché européen de provenance brésilienne et argentine. puisqu'ils disent qu'il y a plein de problèmes avec, en fait, avec les tests concernant les pesticides, les résidus de pesticides, etc. Je voudrais savoir quelle est la réaction de la Commission, qu'est-ce que vous allez faire avec cette résolution. Merci.
Merci. Une question pour Myriam.
Oui, merci pour la question. On n'a pas de réaction immédiate, on doit encore examiner le dossier. Je dois juste vous rappeler qu'en ce qui concerne les soja, les tarifs pour les soja sont déjà à zéro, alors ça ne va pas changer avec l'accord de Mercosur. Et aussi, je voudrais aussi insister que l'accord commercial avec Mercosur ne change pas les règles sanitaires qui sont les mêmes pour les importateurs et les producteurs locaux de l'Union européenne.
Merci beaucoup pour cette réponse. Y a-t-il d'autres questions au commerce international pour Myriam aujourd'hui? Ça ne semble pas être le cas et donc je passe la parole à Nacho. El Confidencial.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a question on the Spanish strategy on disinformation. On Monday, you indicated that the European Commission had no reason to believe that the strategy will would put press freedom at risk. I would like to ask again, because even if last week the Federation of Associations of Spanish Journalists already says that they were that the ambiguity of the regulation leaves several important aspects in the air that give us deep concern about the possible consequences. Yesterday, Reporters Without Borders also criticized it, and I quote, "Although the European Commission has endorsed the procedure approved by the government and frames it within the EU action plan against disinformation, Reporters Without Borders believe that the rule remains imprecise and potentially dangerous for fundamental freedoms such as information and expression." So I'd like to know what's your response to these concerns on the part of different organizations, and if you continue to think that this norm, that you have no reason to think that this norm could put at danger that freedoms. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass the floor to Johannes.
Hi, Nacho. Good afternoon. Look, we have no comment to make on comments of others. I gave our position on this extensively on Monday. That has not changed since Monday. It's also not the Commission who has framed this law in the context of the action plan. It's simply that is in the law written that this is putting into, or actually updating, if you want, the structure within Spain, responding to the action plan and nominating a contact point, for example, for RAS, the Rapid Alert System. So it's not us interpreting the law; it's basically the law as it says itself. I have said that more generally, that any approach in the area of disinformation always has to respect the freedom of expression, media freedom. This is a fundamental principle which guides the Commission's work, but also the work of member states in the EU in response to disinformation, that I have said clearly on Monday. But once again, a general principle, and I really have nothing to add to the comments that you raised today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other questions for Johannes today on the issue of disinformation or on other issues related to the digital agenda? I do not see any, so I reopen the floor and we go to Jenny. Jenny, you had asked for the floor. Jenny, if you are no longer there, then I move to Anders Jepsen. Anders Jepsen.
Individuals under travel ban had been deleted from the SIS-2, the Schengen list.
Anders, we missed the beginning of your question. If you could start over, thanks.
Sure. Danish police today reported that by mistake a list with individuals under travel ban had been deleted from the SIS2 Schengen list. I would like to know if the Commission has been informed about this and what are the possible implications of this?
Thank you, Anders. No, we do not have information on this. Adalbert is saying, so we will look into it, and if we have anything to say, we will come back to you on this issue. Are there other questions for us on the issue of Schengen today, or issues related to home affairs? I see that Yanis had a question on Frontex. So I pass the floor to Yanis. The source of your microphone, Yanis, is not the right one. If you could try to correct it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. I just wanted to clear something up regarding the recent extraordinary meeting of the Frontex Management Board, which happened a couple of days ago. We saw a statement coming from the executive director talking about the creation of an evaluation committee that would be coordinated by the Commission. But then yesterday evening, we saw a statement from the Commission and a note from the chair of the board, which were, let's say, in a different tone and much stricter, and seemed to be at odds with the statement of the executive director. Could you clear up what's going on there, and if the Commission was dissatisfied with the original statement by Frontex? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yanis. I do not believe there is a discrepancy. There is a statement by the chair of the management board, which is publicly available, and the statement of the executive director of Frontex is in his capacity as the executive director of the agency. For the statement of the management board, as you will have seen, it is a statement that is publicly available, and the conclusions of the management board in this statement are something that we welcome. We also welcome the fact that as immediate next steps, the management board has asked the executive director to reply in writing ahead of the following management board meeting at the end of November to any questions that the members of the board may ask until Friday of the 13th of November. And against this background, we will also request the executive director as well as the fundamental rights officer ad interim for further clarifications, because it is very important to understand the situation regarding Frontex's inquiry and the alleged incidents, and to know about any follow-up actions by the agency or the executive director. And our questions will indeed concern any incidents that could have been or should have been qualified as pushbacks, and the procedure to follow it, to deal with them. That's as much as I can say at this point.
Thank you, Adalbert. Are there other questions for Adalbert on Frontex-related issues? David, your question on Frontex or Schengen or Home Affairs?
Oui.
Je t'en prie.
Oui, merci. Deux questions sur la réunion du board de Frontex. La première, j'ai vu une référence aux menaces hybrides. Je voulais comprendre de quoi en parle-t-on, parce que ce n'est pas très clair dans les deux communiqués. Deuxième question, est-ce que la Commission, la commissaire en particulier, a encore confiance dans le directeur de Frontex ? Et après, j'aurais une question que je te pose, si je peux, sur l'accident qui a eu lieu hier dans la Méditerranée centrale, avec 6 personnes qui sont mortes. Je voulais savoir s'il y a un enfant de quelques mois dans l'eau. Est-ce que vous avez un commentaire? Merci.
Merci David. Donc pour prendre tes questions dans l'ordre, concernant la question des menaces hybrides, je t'inviterai peut-être en premier lieu de consulter Frontex à ce sujet, mais de manière générale, ce qu'il y a dans les différentes déclarations se réfère à un processus qui va démarrer, et je pense que nous pourrions peut-être commenter plus lorsque ce processus aura abouti. Ensuite, sur la confiance au directeur exécutif, tu as déjà posé cette question et je n'ai rien à ajouter à ce que j'ai dit à ce moment-là. Je pense que c'était à peu près il y a 2 semaines. Et enfin, sur les incidents, l'incident tragique auquel tu fais référence, évidemment, nous déplorons cet incident. Mais ensuite, pour des questions opérationnelles concernant ce qui s'est passé, je pense encore une fois que tu serais peut-être mieux servi en posant la question à l'agence qui a beaucoup plus de visibilité opérationnelle sur ce qui se passe sur le terrain. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, Adalbert. Au vu du temps qui nous reste avant le début de la conférence de presse, je change de sujet et donc j'en reviens à Jenny. Jenny, you had questions on the coronavirus. Does your mic work now? If so, please go ahead.
Yes, hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
So my question, I also taped it, but thank you. I'm Jenny Virtanen from Finnish Helsingin Sanomat. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin asked today in the Politico Open-Ed a better cooperation between member states for corona measures. She also asked for common quarantine measures and digital health days for test results to smoothen the travel. How the cooperation between member states works now from the Commission perspective, and why the setting up common quarantine rules have been so slow, and would this common database for test results, for example, work? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I will pass the floor to Stefan, but before, let me say that, of course, we always welcome when heads of state or government call for more cooperation in the area of health. And indeed, the Commission has been making recommendations in some of the areas that you just mentioned to member states in the recent weeks and months. And indeed, we look forward to progress on these issues. It is clear, as you know, that competences in the area of health are largely at the level of member states, but the Commission has a big coordination role to play, which it has been carrying out to the best of its ability. And I think it is dawning on everybody that there is a need to further increase the capacity of the European Union to react jointly, coherently, and swiftly to the different dimensions of a health crisis. And indeed, yesterday in this very press room, we had Commissioner Stella Kyriakides presenting to you some of the initiatives which the Commission is launching in this area, with more to come, and many that have already been presented. That being said, and hoping not to have stolen all of Stefan's arguments, I pass the floor to him for specific elements.
Well, Eric, I think you have said everything that matters. As you said, and I'd like to stress again, this is something that the Commission is obviously aware of the different practices. We are working together with member states on recommendations, on guidance to make sure that we have a common approach, that's also in the interest of the citizen, of course. But apart from that, I think, Eric, you have set the scene quite correctly. So back to you.
Thank you. Other questions in the area of health for us today? Please only keep your hand raised if it is in the area of health. Okay, Tommaso, you have a question.
Yeah, good morning. Galla Voltieri in Kronos, Italy. It's a question actually on health, and particularly because on the colors which are assigned to the different regions in Europe. Because if I recall well, in the recommendation which was approved about 1 month ago, it was recommended to use green, orange, red, and gray for zones with which were lacking of data. But I see, just for to mention an example, because in Italy, the government is dividing the territory into yellow, orange, and red zones, no green zone, and yellow was not envisaged in the recommendation. And for example, Belgium is considering all of Italy as a red zone. So I wonder if you're going to be more pushy with the member states to enforce and to implement the measures which were agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommaso. I pass the floor to Stefan.
Thank you very much, Tommaso. Well, indeed, we have the recommendation was adopted to which you referred to some time ago, and the idea, the objective was exactly to create some clarity and predictability for everybody following this color code. And this is a color code that's being implemented so that all our citizens are aware of the different situations in these member states on the basis of criteria that have been laid down in the past. So it's a matter of applying these things. It's a matter of making sure that the member states pass the right data to the ECDC so that on the basis of this, we can continue to clearly show to the member states and to the European citizens what the situation is. In terms of what this means for the different member states may obviously adopt certain measures, but this depends on the situation or the competences of the member states. It's important that there is a very strong coordination, but the map of the ECDC is exactly meant to help coordinating efforts between member states. Thank you.
Thank you. James, you have a question on health. James Christ, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Yes, I have a question on health. Could you tell me what the unit price is for the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, which the Commission has made an offer on? How much does each shot cost, please? And I also have a Brexit question, but...
James, the answer is a simple no. We cannot tell you what the price of the vaccine is. As you know, this is information which is in the contract which was signed between the Commission and the companies concerned, but this information is not public.
Why isn't it public, please, Eric? I didn't know, which is why I asked the question.
No problem. Well, very simply, we are negotiating commercial contracts with a whole series of companies. And obviously, when you are negotiating contracts, some of these negotiations, by the way, as you know, are still ongoing. The negotiations are obviously of a confidential nature, so as not to influence the outcome of the negotiations. Right. We stick to the health theme. Rafaela, you have a question. Rafaela, go ahead.
Hemp products.
Rafaela, could you start over again, please? We didn't hear the beginning. Don't switch off.
Products.
No, can you start over, please? Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I have a question concerning hemp products, in particular substances containing CBD. And this question comes as among Austrian farmers, sellers and producers of hemp, the fear is rising concerning the Commission's intentions or considerations to classify CBD as a narcotic. So could you just please give us an update concerning your possible proposals and a time frame? When could we expect a possible decision on whether to clarify CBD as narcotic or to not clarify it as those? Thank you.
Thank you. I believe this is once again a question for Stefan, indeed. Stefan.
Yes, thank you very much. So Doubts exist indeed. Thank you for your question. Doubts indeed exists whether CBDs can be considered as food. The general food law excludes from the definition of food substances considered as narcotics within the meaning of 2 UN conventions. Now, the Commission's preliminary view is that CBD extracted from the flowering and fruiting tops of the hemp plant should be considered as a narcotic falling under the United Nations Single Convention. As a consequence, these substances could not be qualified as food pursuant to the General Food Law, and they would therefore fall outside the scope of the Novel Foods Regulation. The Commission informed the applicants of these preliminary views, and we invited them to provide comments. We'll then take a decision on the validity of the concerned applications afterwards. I'll leave it at that for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rafaela, you have a follow-up.
Mentioning you're going to decide afterwards. When will afterwards be? So could you give us a time frame?
Stefan.
Thank you. We are looking in the matter. I'm not in a position at this stage to give a time frame, but we are obviously following up so that we can come to further steps as soon as possible. But I cannot give at this stage a time frame.
Thank you. We will take one last question. We will take one last question today from Patrizia. Patrizia, go ahead.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, Patrizia Antonini with Danza Press Agency. I would like to understand, is the Commission considering at all to have contacts with the Chinese developers of the vaccine, which is now being tested, for example, in Brazil, and with the Russian Sputnik 5, which Moscow says is effective at 92%. Or we're just focused on the European produced vaccines. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the second part of your alternative. We are focused on the pharmaceutical companies that pursued vaccines in Europe. We have a vaccine strategy which already dates back quite some time ago and which led to all the negotiations that have been ongoing, that are still ongoing with vaccine manufacturers. And we have had the opportunity here many times of explaining the process, and it is indeed focused on a set of companies that produce or will produce their vaccines in Europe. That brings us to the end of our midday briefing for today, and I now pass the floor to Vice President Jourova and Commissioner Dalli for the press conference on our LGBTIQ strategy. Thank you very much.